If you lose your hope and vision and dream, you're probably going to lose your energy as well. Each person has a different, unique purpose they were put on this planet for. Those works prepared in advance for them to do. Our job is to discover what those are and find the freedom to lean into them. Put your head down, work as hard as you can, ignore your wife and kids, forget about your health, just make as much money as you can. And then when you get to be 48, 10 years from now, freak out, quit your job and join a nonprofit and try to make a difference.
There's a difference between a dream chaser and a dream catcher.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Dream Catchers podcast. I'm your host, Jerome. And I probably say this every episode, but there are certain episodes where I really feel like we have a very special guest. And so a couple of weeks ago, I got introduced to Lloyd Reeb. And we were talking on a call, just kind of getting to know each other. And he said, yeah, man, I've done over 25,000 hours of coaching. I was like, 25,000 hours. Like, how many years does that take? And we won't talk about the number of years that Reeve has been doing that, but I just want to stick a pin in 25,000 because I think there's so few people who get that many reps at something. And during that call, we were talking about family and really launching your kids into the world in a way that they could be successful. And he gave me a couple of things that he thought I could do with my girls. And I did one immediately. Right. The first one I did immediately because it was a quick assessment that they could do. And we've got a trip coming up where we're going to do some of the other things that he offered to me. But the fact that he just came in and wanted to give in that manner right off the bat just demonstrates who he is as a person. So I encourage you, if you're a parent or if you're nearing halftime of your career, then you probably want to pull out a pen and a pad because this is going to be an episode specifically for you. So with that said, Lloyd, so good to be with you. Thanks for making time for us today.
Oh, gosh, you bet, Jerome. So uh, take us into how we can best interact and serve your listeners.
Yeah, man. So I want to start out with there's something called the Halftime Institute. What in the world is that and how did it come to be?
Well, in our era where people have longer lifespan than typically had throughout human history, you often come to a season in life where you look up from your desk and you wonder, is there more to life than this? Is there something else than just getting up early, getting kids in the bus, getting to work, paying off a mortgage, trying to eke out some vacation time and maybe have some fun with friends and stay somewhat healthy and date your spouse if you're married? Is there something more than just this routine? And what would give my life more meaning and joy and impact in the second half? And at some point, you start to think about the amount of time you have left and versus the amount of time you've lived. And you go from making a living to really wanting to make a life, to being, pursuing chief executive officer to becoming chief life officer. And they're new skills, they're different skills. Building a career is one thing. Building a life is something much more intimate and complex and rewarding, actually, at the end of the day. And so back in 25 years ago, Bob Buford and I founded the Halftime Institute around his first book, which was his own life story of growing the family business and then finding himself at this place and wondering, what on earth was I put on this planet to do? And what's the one thing I can't not do that really chases me around, the thing I care the most about? And so we created a place just like halftime is in football, where you come into the sort of locker room of life and you stop and reflect on what's gone well and not so well. And what do I want in the long term? And how am I going to redirect my time, talent, and treasure to get there?
Time, talent, and treasure, those resources. One of the ones that came up for me recently when I was leading a workshop was energy as being one of those resources that we have to come up with the allocation plan for. And so I think that probably fits in talent, but I just thought it would be worth having a conversation about energy and the use of energy, because I think when you get to halftime, you start to see, if you're not careful, energy wane. How does energy kind of fit into the picture for you when you think about time, talent, and treasure?
Yeah, part of it's physical and part of your energy is deep, deep inside your soul, comes from the inside out. And you can find examples of people like David Green that owns Hobby Lobby and John Maxwell, who's a leadership author. I spent 2 days with them recently out at the Hobby Lobby home office. One's 81, one's 78, and their energy level is through the roof because it's coming from some deep place inside. They've been nurturing the wellspring of their life. And in both cases, their bodies don't have the resilience they once did. They need to get more sleep. It's harder to maintain muscle mass, but their energy level is really coming from the inside. Now, how they deploy it is changed over time. They've gone from warrior when they were young, trying to win. He started Hobby Lobby when he was, I don't know, 25 or something, in one little shop. And now they have 980 stores or something and $8 billion in revenue. And then he became a king where he was the leader, and now he's more of a sage. Well, when you're in the sage role, you can still bring a ton of energy, but you do it in a different way. So if you're young, you probably need to be a warrior. You need to be hand-to-hand combat of trying to be great at what you do to contribute to our world. And if you become a more seasoned leader, then how do you become the best servant leader out there that's really touching people's lives and making, a profit, etc. And then if you're in the season I'm in my early 60s, you have the opportunity to bring all the wisdom, experience, the intuitions that you've gained to serve other people, often younger people. And the joy, it can be so rich and fulfilling. Now, if you lose your hope and vision and dream, you're probably going to lose your energy as well. So how do you renew your passion and your purpose for the next season of life?
Man, man. Okay, so you've used the word fulfilling maybe 5 times since we've started this conversation. And I find that most people have a hard time actually defining that word. And so when you use the word fulfilling, what does it actually mean?
It means that when you have a calm moment to pause and reflect, you feel a deep, overwhelming sense of satisfaction at the contribution you've been able to make in other people's lives. It's hard to find fulfillment in just acquisition, in getting more and more stuff. In fact, in many ways, the return on stuff drops off after a certain point. I've often said that happiness is inversely correlated with how many toilets you own. If you get more than a couple of homes, you're probably going to get so much complexity going in your life. If you get too many different investments, you get too much complexity going in your life. Even if you just try packing too much travel into your life, you end up with too much complexity, and it diminishes the joy. But I'll tell you, if you train your heart and soul to serve each person you lock eyes with, at the end of the day, when you put your head on your pillow, you're going to find a deep sense of fulfillment.
And so fulfillment is calm, it's peace, it's
I think it's
being
even
proud.
deeper. I think it's deeper than that, is sense of you've lived out your destiny. There was a French poet that once wrote that when you discover your destiny, if you don't follow it, it follows you like an accusing shadow.
I talk about being haunted, right, by the things that you're supposed to be doing, you're supposed to be doing. It's the thing that wakes you up out of your dream and makes you take action to make that dream a reality. And some people I find just think that they don't have that level of passion anymore. They are caught on that treadmill of more, and they think more achievement or more accomplishment is the answer to finding fulfillment. But I think you feel very differently than that.
Yeah, I was blessed with success early in my career as a real estate developer. And so I have had financial freedom for 30 years now, Jerome. So Um, I I'm thankful that through that time, I really had I've had the opportunity to compare the joy and fulfillment that I find from our wealth as it grows versus the joy and fulfillment I find in making a difference in other people's lives using my unique abilities. And each person has a different, unique purpose they were put on this planet for. Those works prepared in advance for them to do. And our job is to discover what those are and find the freedom to lean into them. And they could be small or apparently small, or they could be apparently big. It's kind of not that important. What matters is my alignment with that. And one of the things that fights against us being able to really lean into that is to create the calm space or the margin in life to really think deeply, to understand what are my strengths, what are my unique interests, what difference would I like to make in this world? If at the end of the day, I was able to make any contribution, what would it be? Of course, if you still believe that the pathway to happiness is to accumulate as much stuff as you possibly can, if it's really all about you, you're not going to take the time to really think about where your best contribution is on this planet. But at some point, that, like they say in the South, that dog won't hunt. At some point, that doesn't take you where you want to go. You look up and you realize I've been climbing a ladder, but it's leaning against the wrong wall.
When people come to the Halftime Institute, are they usually at the top of that ladder looking around frustrated because they were on the wrong building?
Well, there's two groups that we serve at the Halftime Institute. There's an emerging leader group, and these are people in like 28 to 38 that are going to be CEOs one day, but they don't want to ruin their life on the journey. And they're wise in that they're looking around and saying, "Hey, where is this taking me?" It's Peter Drucker's question, to what end? And so they're modifying their strategy mid-course, and they're not dumbing down their career ambition. They're just going at it in a way that they're going to win in the long term. And then there's another group that come, in their midlife, 45 to 55, and they realize now, oh my gosh, I've been pursuing this one thing, and at the expense of my health, or at the expense of my relationships, or at the expense of my faith. And I want to figure out how to balance this out. And I want to make a contribution. So those are kind of two different places. Frankly, my kids are in their mid-30s. And I tell them halftime is a remedy, not a strategy. Like I would never say to them, look, Carter is my son. He's 37. He works at a Alston & Bird national law firm. Put your head down, work as hard as you can, ignore your wife and kids, forget about your health, just make as much money as you can. And then when you get to be 48, 10 years from now, freak out, quit your job and join a nonprofit and try to make a difference. That's not a strategy. Don't do that, for goodness sakes, Set a limit on how much time you bill, and take your wife on a date, and take those sweet girls out and do something fun with them, and include them in what you love at disc golf or whatever you love doing. And you'll do better over the long term anyway, financially. Many of the people that I coach who just put their head down and pursued wealth, at some point, if their spouse feels uncherished, they're going to end up with 50% of the wealth they had anyway. Do you really want to double your money only to drop it by 50%? That doesn't, and just think of the pain and suffering that you caused all along the way.
So we call that, go ahead.
Mhm. Well, so it doesn't take much thinking to stop midstream and say, what do I really want at the end of the day? And is the way I'm deploying my time taking me there? And get as clear as you can on what your purpose is, then get free and then get going. So get clear, get free, and get going.
Get clear, get free, and get going. I love that. Some of the stuff that you've talked to about fits in our process. And so, like, our process is next, and the N is for nourish. And so, that time that you spend reflecting and getting clear and understanding your unique abilities and really figuring out what's transferable from the things that you've already done into what I call mission work. Uh, that it really resonates with me because I think success leaves clues. And, to have financial freedom in your 30s is something that's very rare. Uh, and then to be able to sustain that, because uh, usually if you make money that early, there was a windfall of some way, shape, or form. And then being able to continue to produce at that level is pretty difficult. Um, did you have any like missteps along the way that helped you kind of dial this in, or was it really just from working with clients that you were able to see the types of collateral damage that really show up when people seem to be doing well, but maybe aren't doing so good?
Well, so there's two pieces to that. One is just the financial piece. How do you, build financial margin and maintain financial freedom over a long period of time? Um, and we could spend some time talking about that. And then the second is how do you dial in your mission or purpose, right? And so let's just talk about how you dial in your purpose, first of all. I think one of the most important things you can do is take the time to sit quietly by yourself and ask yourself, what do I care the most about? What is the primary loyalty of my life? What if I could make any difference in my life, what would it be? And one way to get at that is to sit and ask yourself the question, if my life turned out perfectly, what would the elements be? So, Jerome, let's suppose that 30 years from now, you and I are sitting together on a bench in beautiful North Carolina, because this is our home. And I say to you, Jerome, those 30 years went so fast. How did it go for you? And suppose you look off in the distance and you give deep thought to it. You take your time, and then you look back at me and you say, you're not going to believe it. It went perfectly. What would be those things you'd have to scroll through in the back of your mind to draw that conclusion? Those are long-term metrics. Those are much further out than just having a good career, and very often it includes things like your relationships and your faith and your health and wellness and the contribution you made in the life. And I've had people say, I would have become the most generous real estate company in America. That's one young guy, Micah's byline to his real estate company in Nashville, to become the most generous real estate company in America. I mean, that just came out of him. He grew up in poverty, and now he owns a string of hotels that he's been renovating in East Nashville, and all the profits go to fund homeless and wellness issues for people that are suffering in East Nashville. So in other words, he gets to play on the capital as the building appreciates, but all the cash flow he gives away, and he's 41 years old. Like, think about that. Every time he takes one of his 4 little kids to those hotels, he says, when someone checks in here, 16 homeless people get a warm night's stay, or 100 hot showers, or 30 meals. I mean, think about this. How is that going to change your kids' perspective on life? If you take them to one of your hotels and you tell them every time someone checks in here, we as a family get to do that. So that's how Micah got clear. He took time to think about what he really cares about. Where did he come from? And then you get really clear on your skills. So Micah's a great real estate developer. So one of the things he does, he's got architects working with him. He's got land planners. So he takes one nonprofit in the city of Nashville, and that has a real estate problem, and they do all the work. They design what they need for a solution for their real estate. They take it through the city approval process because they're good at that. They arrange the financing. They do the development work. They take the whole project on. They do one a year. Now, at 40, he's going to live another 45 years, right? He's going to have helped 50 nonprofits solve their biggest real estate problem because he's just using his skills. So you start by thinking deeply and then you test it out. You try it out. That's why you get clear, then you get free, then you get going. If you don't have any margin, if you're not free, if you don't have any time in the week to spend trying things out, you won't get going. If you don't spend time thinking and getting clear on who you are and what you care about, you won't know where to get going. So you get clear first as best you can. Then you clear up your calendar. You cut low value stuff out. And then you you try it once, maybe twice. My first thing, Jerome, was I started mentoring prisoners in a federal penitentiary every Thursday afternoon. And that was when I was like 32. And it turned out I love helping people one-on-one, but I really didn't relate to their world very well. I had never I'd never been beaten up on the way to school. I'd never had someone, bring drugs into our home or whatever they were experiencing that had put them on this path. And as I listened to them, I realized this is close, but not right. It's helping people one-on-one, but it's not the right people group as much as I cared about them. Now, that little first test drive was very helpful for me because it was humbling to realize, you know what? I care about these people, but I'm not well equipped to help them. There are other people who are. And now I coach CEOs. And it's interesting because in my heart, I don't view one person as more important than the other. It's just that I've been equipped to serve this certain kind of person who has similar needs. They're trapped in the journey to success as opposed to just trapped in what the environment they grew up in, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I think identifying the problem you want to solve and then the people who have that problem is really important.
Mm.
Um, I watch so many people say, "Oh yeah, well I'm going to start a nonprofit and we're going to run around and raise money because people are going to believe in the mission." But I think the way that your friend in Nashville is doing it is the way to do it, which is there's an operating business that creates the dollars that fund the nonprofit activity. Uh, it's the only way that I've seen things be sustainable.
Mhm.
I want to come back to the financial margin piece, but I think that's going to be tied into this concept of a family business and building the family enterprise. And so, if there's a way to bridge those two topics together, I'd love to kind of go down that second pathway that you identified with the question I asked a few minutes ago.
Yeah. Well, so not every leader is an entrepreneur, and not every leader is designed to run and grow a multi-generational family business. But if you are, it is a great way to make an impact in this world because businesses bring people in every single day and give them meaningful work that lifts their self-esteem and enables them to make a contribution and go back home and serve their family. And you have the option to be able to love them extravagantly in the process of building a great enterprise together. And there's some amazing examples of people around the country and around the world building for-profit enterprises that are deeply compassionate. And one of the things I like to do when I come alongside a entrepreneur who's using his business and his family is using their business intentionally to be a blessing in the world is we will have a conversation as a management team around what I call a 9-box grid, where the bottom part of this grid is physical, emotional, and spiritual needs. And the vertical axis is your employees and their families, the customers and suppliers you serve, and the communities that you work in. So you can see how you'd get 9 boxes, right? Along the bottom, what are the physical, emotional, and spiritual needs of your employees and their families, of the customers and suppliers you work with, and then the communities that your enterprise is in. And I'll take the management team deep into that and just simply ask the question, if you own this company yourself and you could make 3 amazing impacts in humanity, what would they be and where do they go on this 9-box grid? And one person will come up and say foster care, and another will come up and say, drug addiction stuff, or another will come up and say loneliness among seniors, or, just so many issues, right? Well, pretty soon people have identified what they care about and how this enterprise could actually make a difference. When there's a complexity to multi-generational family businesses that you really need expert help on, particularly as your family gets married to people outside the family, and they bring different strengths and perspectives inside. You have to have a way to have open conversations where people can join in, but they don't feel forced to join in. Now, let's talk about the financial piece of that. Very often, a well-run family business creates financial margin. It creates wealth. And historically, wealth has ruined families. So what do you do about that? Wealth has created conflict in thousands and thousands of families over generations. In fact, in every culture, there's an expression, rags to riches to rags. Because that happens, the first generation works really hard to get out of rags to riches. The next generation doesn't necessarily know how to sustain it. And the third generation is squandering it. And it's causing harm, So one of the key things, if you're building a business and you're creating wealth, is to come to grips with what money means to you and what are the values you want to pass on before you pass the money down. And do you want to pass money from generation to generation? Are your unique kids and grandkids equipped to be able to handle it wisely? So in my situation, when Linda and I were starting developing, so I went to McGill University in Montreal, got a great education, came out, started working at TD Bank, and I realized right off the bat, I'm not a corporate guy, I'm an entrepreneur. So I bought 18 acres in an orchard and severed off 3 lots, which gave me some money that I could pay for the road design, and then we built a subdivision. So from 21 to 26, I was building and selling these lots and working at the bank for pennies, right? Banks don't pay very well generally. And anyway, it worked. And I ended up with a bunch of capital. And it forced Linda and I to stop and ask the question, what does money mean to us? Now, money can mean security. It can mean lifestyle. It can mean prestige. To us, it meant freedom. But you got to decide, because money is a terrible master, but a great servant. And if you let money become your master, it will ruin your life. If it becomes your tool and resource and it serves you, then it can do amazing things at just the right time, in just the right way. We decided on freedom. So we built retirement communities that have funded our family for the last 30 years. Now, they're not too sexy. They go up in value. They stay 97% occupied. They spin out cash. We paid them off. They've grown up in value, 5 or 6 times. So if you put $1 million down and 30 years later you have something worth $15 million, because you get leverage on real estate, we put 25% of the value down, and that multiplied 16 times. So that's how you create wealth, right? Is through compounding returns. Well, one of the things we did at the same time in 1993 was we set a limit on our lifestyle. In our culture, when your wealth goes up, your lifestyle goes up. Does that make any sense? And even a more important question, is that in the best interest of my family? What is in the best interest? What lifestyle is in the best interest of my family?
Hey guys, as you might know, a very small percentage of the people who actually listen to this podcast are subscribers. So do us a favor, subscribe. In fact, we did some analytics and we found out that only 25% of the people who listen are subscribers. And our goal is to get that to about 75% over the next 3 months. So do us a favor, hit the subscribe button so you get notified when our new episodes come. We plan to bring immense value to you guys going forward as we continue to improve the content that we create at Dreamcatcher. Your dreams should be real. Let's get back to the show.
That's a way more important question than just how can we earn more money so we can live more luxurious lifestyle. And so what we decided to do is instead of instead of giving up in order to be able to serve others, we decided we were going to trade up. We changed the language when the kids were little. From giving up, we not giving up a bigger house and a faster car, whatever. We still live in a beautiful place at Lake Norman. We still have nice vehicles. There's a tennis court right here and a pool. But we decided we were going to trade up. In other words, instead of more stuff, we were going to make a meaningful contribution in the world, which would give our family more joy. So our kids give out of our giving fund every year. And then we sit around and thank at Christmas Eve, and we talk, and they each talk about what they gave to, the strategy of that nonprofit, and one story of someone whose life was changed. And we often cry. When COVID happened, for example, Carter came and showed a video of people bringing custom meals to seniors in New York City who had special dietary needs but couldn't go out because of COVID. And so here's a guy running up the stairs at this brownstone in Queens or somewhere, giving this sweet little old lady her meal for the day, and then running to and our kids are saying, those are our meals. Like, we paid for those meals for that sweet little old lady. Now, is that more fun than, I don't know, what else you do? Like buy something else, right? You see my point, Jerome?
I do. I got a buddy that says, "What are you gonna do? Buy another watch?" Like when you start thinking about some of the, we'll call it wasteful things that people do. It's really fascinating though, because you can get to a point where you don't enjoy the money or using the resources anymore. And I've always been very cautious around there only being joy when you, I'll say give it away, but it sounds like you changed giving to trading it away. Um, or maybe you see it as, do you see it as an investment in others?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm not giving, I'm investing, and I'm looking for a return. So for example, I started an organization called Ardent Mentoring. We match seasoned leaders with young Christian social entrepreneurs that are running organizations that run like a business, but serve with compassion. So there's a young guy in Philadelphia that runs something called Go Oats. And it's healthy snacks for busy moms that come right out of the freezer when you're getting your kids to school. And he sells them at Fresh Market and Costco, etc. But he's got oat farms in Haiti, and he employs people at a living wage. And then he's got a program for disadvantaged kids downtown Philadelphia. And he's a young, talented entrepreneur. And so through Ardent Mentoring, we've matched people like that up with some world-class leaders. So his mentor is the head of Arm& Hammer. And before that, he ran Sunkist brand. So you imagine this young 28-year-old entrepreneur has this 60-year-old guy open his Rolodex of every relationship he needs to get great at building that brand. And there, guess who's having the more fun? I don't know who's having more fun, the old guy or the young guy. Like
That's a way for folks who are in that second stage of life or past halftime playing third or fourth quarter to actually get the fulfillment by investing and serving in a capacity that they might not have had time for when they were in the hustle and bustle of growing and acquiring. Is that right?
Exactly. And the problem they face is, well, they'll say to me, I'd love to mentor, but how do I find these young, talented, faith-driven entrepreneurs? And how do I learn to mentor their whole life, not just their business? And so if you go to ardentmentoring.org, ARDENT mentoring.org, that's what I've got two young guys there that are in their early 40s that are running that, and we've got a team, and all we do is match people with someone that's the perfect mentee for them.
Now,
So there's investing. That's investing, not giving, right? Because I help fund that enterprise, obviously, and I don't consider that just giving money away. I consider that investing so that these people can, there's a multiplier because they're giving their time free. The old guys are giving their time free, and the young guys pay a small amount so they have some skin in the game.
Wow. So that's interesting because that level of mentorship, coaching, they probably couldn't afford that if they had to go make those connections on their own.
Yeah, it's funny because they both have needs. The young person has needs and can't, they're long on opportunity and short on cash flow. And the older person, the seasoned leader, is long on cash flow and short on opportunity. They need some young person to invest in, and so that they can extend their impact in this world, right? And yet they're sitting on a bunch of cash, so they don't need to charge. They can give their time, and and you'd be amazed at the mentors that when I just call them up and ask them, "Would you mentor this young person?" Absolutely.
So, did you have an opportunity like that, or what led to you wanting to put something like this together?
Well, as I coach people through halftime, I'll ask them, "What was the most fulfilling part of your running your business before you sold it?" And they will say, mentoring the young leaders as they came up inside the enterprise. And so the logical question for me was to say, well, have you thought about doing that in the next 10 or 15 years? And they'll say, well, I'd love to, but I don't know how to find those young people now that my business is sold. And so bingo, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm like, there's a market opportunity right there. Make a match. And so that's what we do. Um, but that's an example, right? Every single one of your listeners has something just like that sitting under their nose. If they just look for the opportunity and then take your talent, take a risk, try to serve somebody.
Hmm. Try to serve somebody. And so, when in looking at your website, it seems to be very spiritual leaning. Um, I think there's no hiding that, you know, I believe it's Christianity is kind of guiding the approach. And I think it's an interesting take, and some people would call it courageous. Uh, why'd you guys decide to do it that way?
Well, one reason is that that's just the what's motivating Bob and I as founders is that we feel so grateful to God's goodness in our lives that this is not serving to try to win God's favor. It's out of gratitude. There's very different things. If I were trying to win, God's favor by doing good things, gosh, that sounds like an incredibly arduous treadmill. Instead, I feel so blessed. It's an overflow of our heart, an overflow of gratitude that we serve others. So that was the starting place. But the second thing is there's something very powerful to sensing that you were designed on purpose, that there's some designer out there in this planet that put you here on purpose. Because without that, if it's just all random chance and chemicals bouncing around inside your body, and then where is the purpose? What would motivate me to give my life away in serving other people, right? I sit here every day and do this um, because it's my calling, right? And not to ratchet up wealth or get anything in return. You do end up with something in return, something priceless, something fulfills you, but that's not the motivation. So, and then the third thing is that very often people who come from a strong faith perspective, they know they have a stewardship responsibility. Now that's different than just pursuing fulfillment. When you feel like your time, talent, treasure are something you've been given by the master of the universe and you're stewarding it, that you'll be accountable one day for, then you really do take it seriously how you deploy those. So those are kind of the three reasons. But I must say that a lot of people come through halftime and are in various different faith stages, and they still get benefit of thinking through systematically what their life's about and how to deploy their time.
So we've mentioned purpose, but we haven't talked about destiny. Do you believe that, I guess, there's a fate or a destiny for each person?
I believe there's a benevolent design for each person, that you could call it the universe, or the uncaused cause, or you could label it God. But I believe that every one of us, when I look inside at our kids and grandkids, I see something very unique in each one. It's so unique. It's hard for me I don't have enough faith to believe that it's just all random. It takes too much faith for me to believe it's just all random. I see in them something very unique. And so then, like that French poet said, it's up to us to discover it, or it follows us like an accusing shadow. You kind of know it when you stumble into, you don't need a lot of scientific evidence. When you stumble into your destiny, it's there. You know it so if someone hasn't, and there's a certain chafing at the end, of the sense of God requiring something of you, I would turn it around, look at the other way. He designed you to live a life so deep and rich and full in an area where every time you make your contribution, it brings you deep joy.
I hear a lot of people say they got to find their passion. What is your initial thought when you hear that phrase? I got to find my passion
Well,
or purpose. Let's go with purpose. I got to find my purpose because I think that one will be more poignant for you.
yeah, I mean, part of it is discovery from an experiential level, and part of it's analytical. I think it's give careful thought to who you are and then the work you've been given. So the part where you've been assigned something, if you do believe in a higher power, in God, or in God, then there's some reason you were designed to do a specific thing. And then there's who you are. So the first part is thinking about you. Are you introverted? Are you extroverted? Do you love speaking? Do you love coaching? Do you love analytics? Do you love technology? What are you best at? Take the Strength Finder assessment and look carefully at your talent themes. And then get out, and one way that I help people get clear on what moves their heart is we have an exercise with about 500 photos of every single human experience you can think of. Fishing, boating, tennis, a burn victim, a substance abuse victim, travel, a whiteboard with someone sketching a strategy. Like, you see what I mean? Not just all the suffering in the world, but all the great stuff too. And we ask people to go through these 500 photos and pick the 3 that most move their heart. Another way is to get a newspaper like New York Times or Wall Street Journal for a week and read it from cover to cover, but don't read it for information. Just read it and ask yourself, what makes me mad, glad, or sad? That's a clue, right? Of what could inspire you and motivate you for a long period of time to work on something. And so I'll give an example. I gave that exercise to someone who's an artist. And one of the pictures she came back with was 2 twin girls that both were born with cleft palates. Now, do you know in some countries you can fix a little girl's cleft palate for $250 or $300?
No way.
Yeah, just a simple surgery done locally. They're good at doing it. The girl doesn't get infected. And you end up with her not having to walk down the street every day for the rest of her life and averting her eyes. So this lady that's an artist, I'll never forget, she pulled that picture out, and her peer group said, well, what do you want to do about that? And she said, well, it came to her. Every painting I paint, I'm going to fund a little girl's cleft palate surgery. So if you buy her painting, get this, Jerome, if you buy her painting, Jerome, You have just paid for a little girl's cleft palate to be repaired. Like, doesn't that bring everybody more joy?
So it's more than you is kind of the punchline. It's more about serving others. That's why I've been placed on this planet. And that's what's going to lead to fulfillment, not another trip or trinket or toy. Is that
Mhm.
a fair statement?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, what's kind of funny, the way it circles around, is in the midst of serving others, you do get more travel and more, that stuff comes when, like, I went to Singapore not long ago, and someone met me at the airport and gave me a big hug and said, "We are so glad to see you here." That's because I've created halftime in Singapore 10 or 15 years ago, and those people's lives have been blessed and they've watched videos, but when I show up in person, they're just so glad to see me. Well, there's no five-star resort, there's no five-star travel company that's going to say, look, if you buy a trip to Asia, we'll guarantee that someone meets you at the airport that says they love you and you've changed their life. It's not going to happen.
And that's probably more fulfilling than pretty much anything else you could do. I'll never forget taking that moment that you talked about and asking, what did I really miss? What do I miss from what I used to do? And it was somebody walking in the office and saying, I don't know if I could have done that without you.
Wow. Mhm.
And that became the
Mm,
mission of helping people make their dreams become a reality because there are a lot of really talented people who know what they want to do, but they're not quite sure how.
mm,
And then there's the even smaller group of people who know why. And we can help with the how and why at a level that I don't think most people can even comprehend. Um, so this conversation for me is one that is true. Like I think we spend a lot of time in our lives looking for truth or seeking truth, and everything that you shared, I've found through my experience, my lived experience, to be absolutely true. And then that's amplified by the folks that I've worked with and anecdotally understanding what they've gone through and what they've experienced. And it is true. Trips, trinkets, and toys don't do a whole lot. Now,
mm.
you might be able to use those to create experiences with other people. Like we did a car rally from Chicago to New Orleans, and I got to do that with people I really care about. That's fun, right?
Yeah,
But
it
just
combines
driving
two
the
or three
car,
different things. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Or there's an autistic boy that lives down my peninsula here on and he loves cars. It's the one point of connection. And so I've taken my 46 Chevy pickup truck down there and he gets it. He's about 6'5" and he gets in that truck and he's just grinning from ear to ear. And then I have a classic, Mercedes Roadster, the little convertible 560 SL from years and years ago. Take that down there and, I got to take the top off because otherwise he doesn't fit in. And then I have a friend that has an Audi R8. Well, that one made him come alive. It's a spider too. So the top goes off and I just got the whoa. And you should have seen this guy smiling. I mean, that's when it's fun. Otherwise, you're just driving around a car trying to look like a hotshot. And you know what? That's almost embarrassing.
yeah, yeah. This is so good. So I've got two last questions, and the first one is you talked about capping the lifestyle, and I can't remember the exact year that you said you decided that this was it. But what is the can you dig more into the psychology of why you want to say like enough is enough? Because I watch so many people move the goalposts. It's like, oh, well, when I get this, then it'll be enough, or when I get this, it'll be enough.
Yeah, well, if you spend time watching what a life with no limits does to children and grandchildren, it will scare you. um, there's a value to putting limits on yourself. And it it creates a firewall between my heart and money. So now when someone says, "Hey, could you come to a talk and we'll pay you 30 grand?" I say, "Well, make a donation to our family giving fund." Well, now guess what? I'm serving you because I want to serve you. I'm not serving you because of money. And I've created this firewall between me and money. It doesn't matter how much money comes in, it's not going to change me. And now I mastered it. It's not mastered me. You could set your lifestyle anywhere you think is the optimum for your family. Now, for example, we didn't want to live in a neighborhood where our kids were only surrounded by a certain lifestyle people. So our neighborhood intentionally has lakefront properties, big homes that aren't on the lake, and smaller homes. And they rode the bus. So they were on the bus with, a NASCAR driver's son, and they were on the bus with regular kids that parents work in the hospital or whatever. And that's what we wanted. We wanted our kids. In fact, our youngest daughter, when she graduated from college, or maybe her junior year, she said, "Dad, I never knew we were rich. How come you didn't tell me?" And I was like, "Honey, that's one of the best compliments you've ever given me." I want her to work. I want her to understand that the value of struggle, right? I mean, if you take a butterfly and you break open its cocoon and it doesn't have to struggle, it will never become a full-fledged butterfly. So we picked a lifestyle that we felt was in the optimum benefit of our family, where they'd have to work and mow the lawn and do things like that, and clean our own sailboat. We scrubbed we get out, pull up to an island, get the little scrub brushes out. We go under the sailboat and scrub it up ourselves. Guess what? It didn't hurt anybody. It was helpful. They learned if you're going to sail on a boat, you got to take care of it, right? So each person, every family is unique. There's about 6 ways to ruin your family, but there are hundreds of ways to have a flourishing family. Hundreds of ways. You got to figure out for you, what does a thriving family look like? What's the difference between a healthy family and a thriving family? And then how does money benefit you and not ruin you? And I'll tell you, if your kids take your credit card to college and they just use it for everything, at the end of the time, they're never going to have learned the value of money or how to master money. And our kids' roommates in college, they all were on daddy's credit card or mommy's credit card. And what we told our kids was in between 8th and 9th grade was, we're going to build a spreadsheet. Actually, more specifically, you're going to build a spreadsheet that predicts how much cost of your college is going to be and how much you need to save and how much we're going to set aside for you. And I still have this same computer here, Jerome. And what they were learning was they were learning the value of money, how to manage money. Because my job is not just to provide for them, it's to equip them.
Wow. That's phenomenal. At some point, I've got to figure out the 6 ways to ruin the family so that we can stop people from doing that. But I won't do that in this episode. My last question for you, man, is what's the one thing you want listeners to take away from this episode?
That building a great life and a great family, and I think the second is more important, always requires leadership and intentionality. You don't get a thriving family by accident, and you don't build a great life. You have to become chief life officer. So what are your long-term metrics? If you're running a business, you have metrics. What are your long-term metrics? What's your personal mission statement? What's your spouse's dream? What's your family vision? If you don't know answers, if you can't just write those down right now, then I would just pick up the phone and call Jerome and say, how do I get the help I need to figure those out? The Halftime Institute is one way. You could just buy, like one of my books is called From Success to Significance. It's a workbook, basically. It's a roadmap. You get into a group. We have groups across the Carolinas, for example, and all across the country, of people that are working in halftime groups to get clear, get free, and get going.
Wow. All right, so I'm on Amazon right now grabbing from success to significance. And I encourage all the listeners to do the same thing because if you don't have significance, then do you really have success? And I imagine you probably challenged people in that way a few times, Lloyd. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. And they've challenged me. You know what's funny, Jerome, is every year I give my kids, all six of them, because there's three and then they got married, so six kids, my roadmap for the next year, and I ask them for their feedback. And they give me great insights and they've been doing that for years, since they were 15. And if you want to teach your kids how to be chief life officer, how to manage their life, get them to critique your own life plan, because that's how you learn. There's no class at university that's going to teach you how to build a great life. They're going to teach you how to have a career. But this is very different.
You've raised the bar on what success looks like, man. Thank you so much for the work that you've been doing over the past, I want to say 30 or 40 years based on what I'm just kind of backing into it. I shied away from it at the beginning because I wanted people to get into this thing. And now that we're in it, hopefully they fall in love with you like I have, man. I just appreciate your heart and the work that you've done and being in purpose and on purpose. I think so few people actually live out life in that way. And you're the epitome of a dream catcher, and you're helping other people make their dreams a reality. And for that, I'll be eternally grateful to you.
Well, thank you, Jerome. Thanks for all you're doing. And if any of your audience want help in halftime, go to halftime.org, or if they want to mentor or be mentored, go to ardentmentoring.org and be glad to serve them. We've got lots and lots of team members that can help. All right, I'll let you run. Thanks for your time today, Jerome.
Thank you. And to the listeners, your dreams should be real. We'll catch you on the next episode.